Hey, everybody. So glad you're with me tonight on Dug Up and Dusted Off. I was not able to be with you last week, but excited to be with you tonight. We've got some really cool things to talk about and some things that, I'm hoping that we will learn from them because they are certainly about me and some of the things that I stepped into, or some of the things that I learned about myself and about life. So I'm hoping that you will learn from them as well. Again, if you're new here, we want to welcome you today. And this is just a chance, 30 minutes, not anything more, to be able to talk with one another, dig up something, dust it off, and get to the real meanings of some stuff. Generally, the real meaning of the things that we get to have to do with our hearts and have to do with how we are being transformed in this world. So I'm hoping there's some transformation that'll happen with you guys tonight. I want to say hey to some folks tonight. Madeline, we're glad to have you on. Sherry, good to see you. Kevin and Susan, great to have you. We just got a tiny little group tonight. Madeline, I already said hey to you. But that's okay. There's power in small groups. So tonight, we definitely, if we're going to be small tonight, let's make some comments. Let's talk about some things, and let's comment on some of the stuff that we're talking about. Hit that heart emoji, hit that like emoji if you can hear me okay, and you're ready to engage. Last week was a weird week because it seemed like I ran into some of the craziest people that I've ever met in a long time, and I didn't even know them. And so the first incident I mentioned on Sunday, this guy literally just, came up behind me. I was turning into a racetrack, minding my own business. He goes berserko because I don't go fast enough through the light. I didn't know he was mad at me until he came out and he looked like he had just gotten out of prison. He had a tattoo with a skull that said, really horrible things. And he was mumbling as he went by my car to go into the racetrack. Well, so that's my first cray-cray incident. The second cray-cray incident that happened to me was on the interstate going down 75. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you before, but it scared me anyway. So I'm going about 80, 75 to 80. That's generally about my average speed. That's generally going slow in the left lane. Well, there was this girl that was on me. I didn't find out she was a girl, but anyway, there was this person on me going down 575, just wanting to get past me. She couldn't get past me because I couldn't go anywhere. There was traffic. It was in the morning. Get on 75. I get up ahead of her, and the next thing I know, she's blaring down me on my bumper again. And you've had these kind of people, obviously. Well, what she does is, and there's traffic in front of me. What she does is, she gets off in the right lane, comes zooming down to the right of me. There's a car up in front of her. She whips over, barely misses the car, almost wrecks the car, and then almost wrecks me. All right. So that was, that scared me, and it also infuriated me. Have you ever been infuriated by somebody else's actions on the highway? Well, I got up around her and, calmly let her know what I thought. She proceeds to pull out a gun and point it straight at me. So I'm looking at this little girl, basically, this little girl and her little brother, I think, in the front seat. And I'm staring down at the butt of a revolver, okay, on the highway. And of course, I backed off. I called the police. I called the 911. Gave them the description of the car. Gave them the description of the people. State trooper. It was a state trooper issue, evidently. State trooper calls me back and says, "We're down here in Atlanta. We're looking for this car. Can you give me the license plate?" Of course, I didn't get the license plate. I was pretty shook up by it, And yes, so you can play devil's advocate here. Yes, should I have sped up to let her know how much I thought, she meant to me in that moment? I probably shouldn't have. But, you would have probably done the same thing. But all of a sudden, I started thinking about how we lose control so very easily. And that I'm not just talking about road rage. You see the incidents of road rage where, just people lose control. They snap. And that's sort of where this thing called overreacting occurs. All right. And if you've overreacted in something, you can hit the heart emoji, like emoji, whatever you want to do. But we tend to, as a people, overreact. Now, we overreact more than we've ever overreacted before in the history of the world. We have overreacted more in this culture than we ever have before. Okay, so why do we overreact? Well, psychologically, it's pretty. It's not pretty simple, but this is just the reason. We overreact because we feel the need to protect ourselves or defend ourselves from something. That's sort of the reason our mind goes to that place. We have this innate need to defend ourselves or protect ourselves from something, a perceived threat. All right, that's pretty much what it is. Now, I want you to think of all the problems that are caused by the fact that we overreact to situations. The fact that I felt like it was an overreaction, but in hindsight, it probably was. But was it an overreaction for that little girl? And I'm talking could not have been more than 17 to pull a revolver and point it at something. That's like a felony. That has to be a felony. That she could have gone to jail for a long time. But would that have been an overreaction on her part? Was it an overreaction on my part? And you can debate that all day long, but no matter what, overreacting seems to be when we have a small thing turn into something in our own heads, as if though we're perceiving it as that somebody is threatening us or we're needing to defend something about the situation, okay? And so we overreact. In the early days of our culture, overreacting was actually a tremendous sign of weakness. So this has been going on for a long time. But in the culture, in the centuries before us, it was a sign of weakness. Now it is a sign, it is just the norm. And so even one of the commentators that I read talking about the state of our culture today, we're angrified. And we're angrified for sure. I mean, it's this place where we tend to overreact instantly about the smallest of situations. Can you tell me in the comment box when you overreacted about anything in your own life? Because, I mean, again, I can name you places where I've overreacted, and they seem to be places in my life where I have I've taken something out of context. I've not read I don't have the full story. Haven't thought about it long enough to process my reaction. There's so many situations where I've overreacted and regretted all of those situations because they had nothing to do with me. And so what are some of the ways do you think that we can sort of quench or sort of stop the overreaction in our lives? Can you name some of those things for me in the comment box? I've got 3 I'm going to name you. Can you name some for me in the comment box? Because, I think it's important that as much as we're all guilty of it, we all deal with it, we all end up, apologizing for it in a lot of cases. And every single time we end up making matters worse because of those overreactions. I think the first thing is to learn what literally self-control looks like. What does self-control look like in your life? And that's a biblical thing. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit, self-control. But for me, I've always thought that self-control took patience. And, Kevin says, I overreact to people. You should not be driving an automobile, not to the degree that you did, just to myself. Yeah. I mean, what happened to me? I've never had that happen before. I mean, that's just crazy. That's insane. But why is self-control so difficult? I mean, I guess because we don't have a lot, we have lack of patience. We we self-control implies a couple of things. It implies that you have matured enough in your emotions and in your mind to know that some things just don't deserve a reaction. Somebody always told me no response is a response. And I've always sort of lived by that. No response sometimes is a response. And a lot of times people are baiting you. A lot of times people are wanting you to react in a certain way. And again, you to have enough self-control not to respond instantly with your words, not to respond instantly certainly with your actions physically. I think, though, that in our culture today, we can rev people up to such a degree that we lose the filter on our heart and on our mouth, which leads to a no filter on our mouth. And we say some of the most ridiculous things because we've overreacted. And, again, if there is a perceived threat to your life or to your family, there is no overreaction. I mean, there's certain things that when we react, there's not an overreaction, no matter what you think, how awful you think the consequences were. Protect your family and protect yourself. But generally, 9 times out of 10, most of the things we're dealing with are small. And I remember the book. What's the book? Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, because it's what? Yeah, exactly. It's all small stuff. And for me, you have to evaluate each and every situation you're in. You have to really take a look at, is this even worth my breath? Is this even worth my time? And all you got to do is go on social media to say, is this, I mean, look at the people that are making the most insane comments on social media. Look at the people posting about their personal lives. Look at the people posting about their politics, about conspiracy theories, about whatever it is, and they just go absolutely ballistic. And what we've done is we've trained ourselves to think that that's okay to get that out for some reason, no matter what the consequences are. Do you know that when they were doing adult couple therapy back in the 70s, they used to teach people that, okay, to get to help with your arguments, that you need to let out your anger. You need to let out your emotions. And so what they did was they took these like inflatables that they would like put over the hands. We had them as kids, it was like the Rock'em Sock'em robots, but they were like, big inflatables that when you hit somebody, it didn't hurt. And so that you sort of role played. So you're in therapy and you're role playing, I'm angry at you because, and, go ahead and punch her on the shoulder, or punch him on the shoulder, and you're getting your anger out. What that led to, that was a big craze in the 70s. What that led to is more domestic violence than you could ever imagine, because people could not, control their emotions, and instead they said, I've got to let it out. And you're the object of the thing that I'm going to let it out on. And so self-control says, you know what? I don't have to. In fact, they used to think that, when you bury your emotions deep down inside. No, actually, self-control means you're able to disseminate and to evaluate each and every emotion, whether healthy or unhealthy, and process it in a healthy way in your own heart and mind, so that it never comes out. So you're never impulsive about any decision. You're never impulsive about any reaction. And so self-control is something we've lost in our own lives. Self-control, during COVID means self-control in our drinking, self-control in our eating, self-control in the things that we medicate ourselves with, self-control in our spending, self-control, just you name it. Where is the self-control in your life? And how do you gain self-control? I mean, that seems to be the big thing. How do you gain self-control? Because again, when somebody, even if you look at the Salem witch trials, and that's a specific incident, but you have a story that was a complete lie told about somebody that sort of, it went around the table and it became bigger and bigger and bigger. When do you say, stop, this is enough? When do you say this has now just become ridiculous? All you have to do is look at the politics of our government and see what our politicians are saying about one another. And it's almost like, did you really say that? Did you really think that that was appropriate? Did you really think through that enough to sort of evaluate your emotions, evaluate the facts, evaluate what should be an appropriate response, if any response is even worth no response is a response. Yet we live in that culture that says, you know what, I don't need to filter my responses because everything's on the table. In fact, the more fantastical a story is about another human being, the more probably truthful it is. And yet there is no self-control. Have we just become spoiled, narcissistic human beings, so much so that we don't care at all about what other people think? We don't care about at all about what is right and wrong, about what is socially acceptable, about actually what is, have we just lost all sensibility? And again, self-control is that one barometer that allows us to say, you know what? I know how to put a check on my emotions. I know how to put a check on my thought processes, and I don't need to escalate it to this degree. For me, the second thing comes into play. If you're with me, just hit the like emoji. I'm talking to only five people tonight, but I hit the like emoji if you think that if this is making some sort of sense to you. The other problem we run into is this: we tend to personalize everything. Do you realize that when we personalize things, what we're doing is we believe that whatever's happening has to do with us, or it is a personal attack on who we are, what we are. So when somebody makes a suggestion about your work, we overreact, and because we've taken it personally. And now we've gone on a witch hunt for that human being. Now we started making up. Now we started attacking that human being, undermining that human being, undermining his or her work, etc. We've overreacted. How many times have you taken something personally when you shouldn't? I take things very personally because I'm passionate about what I do, but I tend to think that everything that's going wrong in the church or in whatever tends to be some sort of result of what I have done or not done. And so, if 2,000 people didn't show up for an Easter service, I'd be like, okay, why didn't 2,300 show up or 3,000 show up? I would tend to take that very personally. Like, what did I do for those people not to come? Or what did I do not to go to the next level? And that is so self-destructive in our lives. When we begin to take things personally, when we begin to think that every human being that has a different point of view or is making constructive, critical suggestions in our life, in our work, in our relationships, or in our behavior, when we take that personally, we tend to overreact. And when we overreact, we don't hear. We fail to see the solution. We fail to see what that human being is trying to do in our lives constructively. We fail to learn about who we are. We fail to grow. We fail to truly see ourselves as as other people see us. And so that personalization of everything, and there are people that do that. I don't do it on everything, but I do it on a lot of things, and that has been destructive in my life. It's been destructive in my ministry. I've gotten caught in the weeds because I've personalized things instead of looking at the bigger picture. No, that person this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with the bigger picture, and actually I can help make the bigger picture better, but instead I took everything personally. I overreacted. I might have said something stupid. I might have alienated myself in some way. And so these are all really, really big problems in our life.
Ron said, so if we have an absence of, how and when do we stand up and take control or continue to be swayed by events? Yeah, strong. Okay, yeah, there's a difference, Ron. I think maybe there's a difference between a an appropriate reaction to things that you might be talking about, standing for your convictions. I think what I'm talking about are more impulsive things that we're seeing. We're seeing people blurt stuff out of their mouths. We're seeing people do things impulsively. We're not seeing, I believe the best reactions are well thought out. There's always an appropriate response to that reaction. And generally it's peaceful. So I think that let me go. It is wiser not to not overact ego. Yeah, I hope did I answer that, Ron, for you? I think we can sometimes blur the line between overreacting and just reacting. Like, when's enough, and you sort of snap and you say, okay, well, maybe it was time to react earlier with a measured response, but instead we let it get out of control and out of control and out of control, and now we have overreacted, and the response was unmeasured, and therefore we caused more harm than good. And I think that that's exactly what needs to happen. A lot of times we do let things fester. We do let things, get out of hand. And then when we should have taken care of it before, we end up overreacting and things happen. But the majority of the times that we overact are in the moment type of stuff. It's in the moment where you literally are faced with a situation and your emotions run out of control. And generally 10 times out of 10, the overreaction does not fit, the response does not fit the circumstance. The response is not equal to the event. The overreaction is way blown out compared to what that person is overreacting to. And again, personalization dooms us every time. And I believe we personalize things more than everything ever before because we think that we're the most special people on the planet. Because we now have access to internet, now we have access to, even more so than celebrities, we have access to being viewed by other people and heard by other people. Now all of a sudden we are more special than we ever were before. So I do believe that sort of personalization comes into play a lot of times. And I think that personalization hurts us in our relationships. I mean, it's hurt me in my relationships before, and if you don't get under check, it's just going to destroy your future in a lot of ways. It's critical that we have self-control. Jesus had self-control, measured his responses. There's only one or two times and I think his response, when he cast out the money changers in the temple, I think that was a measured response that was appropriate. It might have been over the top at the time, but I think it was well overdue, and it was time for that to happen. But again, where are the times in your life that you've overreacted? You might be dealing with one right now. If you've overreacted at any situation, man up, own it, and apologize. That's all you got to do. In my opinion, that's all. I'm still waiting for people to do that in my life. It's never going to happen. But you've got to man up, own it, and apologize. And then you got to learn from it. It's kind of like a wild horse, that's run out of control. What do you do with the wild horse? You put a bridle in its mouth, and then you put a saddle on its back, and someone gets on that horse and they break it. And they tame it enough to know that they might not have self-control, but they know someone else is controlling them. And for me, that's the Holy Spirit. The bit in my heart and in my mouth and in my spirit is the very presence of God. I don't get that right all the time, but I get it right a lot of the time, enough not to, get me in a ton of hot water. But, it's a real thing. It's a very real thing that you must have something to keep you in control. And for Christians, that's the Holy Spirit. And I pray that that Holy Spirit will be something in your life that you're paying attention to, because he is warning you constantly. Wait a second, you're getting to that place of overreaction. You're getting to that place where things are about to bubble over and get pretty out of hand. So you've got to really measure that response. Always measure it with the one that lives with you, in you, which is the Holy Spirit. So there went my voice. Unbelievable. 8:26, perfect timing, because I just ran out of things to say. Hey, listen, if this has meant something to you, hit that heart emoji, that like emoji. I pray for self-control in your own life. I really do. And if you're experiencing that place where you're sort of overreacting, let's talk about it. Give me a shout. Love to talk through you and with you through some of those instances in your life that you're dealing with. May God bless you tonight. May you find that peace tonight that passes all understanding. And that's the very presence of Christ. And I hope that he will give you the greatest gift, which is truly self-control and peace in every decision you make. Hey, may God bless you tonight. I cannot wait to see you next Wednesday. Peace be with you. Bye.